Oh wow, the mic is finally working here. The microphone on the Mac. Just past 2 o'clock here on a Tuesday afternoon here in Southern California. You know what time that is. That is time for Grand Prix Talk here on 22 West Radio. Welcome to the show where I sound kind of like a frog. Yeah, I used up a lot of my voice box yesterday at a Rams game. Too bad they lost, but you know what? I had fun. It was a great night for most people, I would say. I mean, I certainly had fun. Anyway, we're here. That was last night. We are here today. We're not talking about football, at least not yet. We're talking about car racing. So welcome to Grand Prix Talk. My name is Sergio Morales. Thank you all so much for tuning in today on this post NASCAR Championship edition of Grand Prix Talk, Season 3, Episode 11. Make sure you tune in on the 22 West Radio app or here on 22westmedia.com. Either or works just fine. You can also tune in on the Sergio Show on YouTube, so welcome YouTube stream as well. You can follow us at 22 West Radio on Instagram, 22 West LB as well. And you can follow me on Instagram at SMORstagram. Okay, so today is November 12th, and the semester literally ends in 1 month for us here in Long Beach State, which already sounds bonkers and a little worrisome if you ask me, but wow, time really is going by quickly. Like I said, excuse if I don't sound like my usual self. That's because I used up a lot of my voice box yesterday at the Rams game. Anyway, November 12th, let's begin with a little history lesson here on this very day, November 12th. In this day, in 1799, we had our first ever recorded meteor shower in North America. The most famous of these is, I forgot its name, but it happens usually every August every year. But the first one that was recorded was called the Leonids meteor shower that every 33 years or so is enhanced by the appearance of the comet Temple Turtle. Temple Turtle is what I almost called it here. But that was the first ever recorded meteor shower in North America. That happened on November 12, 1799. On-track history today on this day, November 12th, in 2017, the Brazilian Grand Prix was held for the 45th time. It was also, at least I remember it best, for being Felipe Massa's final full-time Brazilian Grand Prix. I remember the year prior in 2016, that was supposed to be his final Brazilian Grand Prix. He ended up crashing out of that one. And man, the scenes in pit lane were very emotional as we saw people all across the pit lane, like going out to applaud Felipe Massa as he carried a Brazilian flag. Like, it was a whole scene, honestly, and it tugs at our heart for sure. But it turns out that wasn't going to be his last Brazilian Grand Prix. That would be the next one in 2017. And that one he would wrap up. He actually got a moment on the podium. So shout out to Felipe Massa. I hope he's been doing all right. Felipe Massa did come close to winning a F1 World Championship. He got out with the short end of the stick in 2008 when Lewis Hamilton won his first of what is currently 7 World Championships at the Brazilian Grand Prix in 2008. My, what history that is. The Brazilian Grand Prix never fails to surprise us here, doesn't it? I kind of miss that race, honestly. I know that it's still going on every year, but man, that really is it really is something. All right, so let's break down some interesting news from across the world of motorsport before we start breaking down all the stuff that went on in Phoenix this past weekend in the NASCAR championships. And yes, we will be talking about Joey Logano and why people are dunking on him so hard right now. So we talked about this earlier in the season of Grand Prix Talk, but now we can officially confirm it. And as a matter of fact, I'll share my screen here on the YouTube stream. Provide engines for the French team starting in 2020. I really don't know how I feel about this. Let's just see what they got to say. So Alpine actually announced it will switch to the 2026 season onwards. The company decided to abandon its works engine program in France's British, I don't know how to say that. I'm not even going to try. In their French plant, which had been working on developing brand new power units for 2026's regulations overhaul. It is widely understood Renault chief Luca De Meo and his advisor Flavio Briatore had a deal lined up to become a Mercedes customer team instead, an arrangement which the team officially confirmed on Tuesday. It's even up on Formula1.com, so it's pretty much a lock deal. Also on motorsport.com, The chicken looks pretty good, and so does the pizza. I wonder if it's actually any good. Pat, let me know if Shakey's is actually any good. Now let's stop sharing screen here. Okay, so Mercedes and Alpine. That is a combination I really didn't think was ever going to happen. To be fair, I don't think any of us really thought that it was going to. This is one of those rare moments where it's just like, how did this happen? How did we get here, right? I would say it's just, I mean, it comes down to Renault not really wanting to invest in their engines anymore. I don't think there's much else to say beyond that. But that being said, whether or not this proves to be a good move or not is anybody's guess. I just feel like Mercedes is a team on the rise. I mean, their engines, they're doing very well. Just look at McLaren and how they're doing. They're absolutely flying at this moment and taking the fight to Red Bull and Ferrari and the Mercedes Works team, which we know they're going to be around for quite a while. Yeah, so yeah, granted, Mercedes does have arguably the best power units in the field right now, but Alpine, they can't also just rely on others to get them out of the water. They really do got to work on their own team as well. You know, there's also like the staffing issues. There's also the aerodynamics of the car, which, granted, this past weekend was it this past weekend, the weekend prior, at the Brazilian Grand Prix, Alpine really shined. You know, scoring a 2 and 3 on the podium, which I think it made all of us feel great. Yeah, we all felt very happy and all for them. But that being said, we definitely just Alpine cannot just rest on their laurels and say, "Oh, Mercedes is gonna save us." Like they can't do that. They can't do that. They gotta step up their own game as well. They can't just rely on someone to come pick them up for them. So interesting news from there. We will see how that plays out. I'm really looking forward to see how Alpine gets better or maybe even gets worse starting from 2026 onward. Um, in other news, also related to Formula One, we have some people stepping down from their roles. In the Aston Martin Formula One team, Dan Follows will be leaving. He was the technical director of Aston Martin. So Dan Follows is on his way. Dan Follows, sorry. He's on his way out, and so is F1 race director Niels Wittig. He too will leave his role. Niels Wittig is leaving immediately. On Tuesday, quote, the FIA said in a statement that the German had left his position ahead of the Las Vegas Grand Prix to, quote, pursue new opportunities, end quote. I wonder what those opportunities look like, but this is just some small news in my humble opinion. You know, obviously the most famous director, the most famous race director of them all, for better or worse, was Michael Masi. But this guy, he's stepping down ahead of time. So I guess if we get another big farce of a race in the next few weeks, then hey, at least we can't blame him. But I don't know. We'll find out about that one soon enough, sooner rather than later, most likely. Yeah, that should be really interesting. But what about Aston Martin and their technical director leaving? That is some interesting news. So Dan Follows, like I said, he's leaving. He's leaving Aston Martin. I think, yeah, also immediately. I just realized that he's also leaving right away. So, quote, under his watch, Aston Martin enjoyed a brief growth spurt in 2023, taking 8 podiums with Fernando Alonso aboard the AMR 23. Man, remember when Fernando Alonso said that somewhere in 2023 that was their last race without like a race win or something like that? Yeah, then Aston's form fell off. Aston fell off as rival teams started to catch up. Of course, 2023 was just absolutely the year of Max Verstappen, but Aston, they were doing pretty solidly in that first half of the year. The second half, not so much. This year, Aston Martin has been stuck in 5th place in the constructors' standings as it struggled to develop its AMR 24, which led to the team's call to make a change to try and turn around its fortunes. One of those changes is, like I said, Dan Follows leaving his spot as technical director of Aston Martin. Take that as you will. I would say that I personally want to think that maybe this could be for the better, but I don't know, to be honest, because it's not like Dan Follows has done a terrible job. I mean, I wouldn't know, right? Like, ask the team and the people who are working in it what they think about Dan Follows in there. That being said, he was also with Red Bull at one point, so he went from Red Bull to Aston. We'll see what happens and where he decides to go next. I mean, who knows? He might end up in IndyCar or something. Hey, on the note of IndyCar, we have some pretty cool news coming out of the IndyCar world over here. Have you guys heard of this guy named Logan Sargent? Yeah, that guy. He was he was Formula One's big American hero, and unfortunately, it sadly did not go to plan. Well, not to worry, race fans, because it looks like our all-American hero is about to come back. He was just spotted not long ago, hanging out with the Meyer Shank Racing team. They were doing some seat fittings. Like, actually, if you check it out on Instagram, there's a video on IndyCar's Instagram, I think, but also on Logan Sargent's Instagram. This dude is getting a seat fitting with Meyer Shank Racing, leading up to his upcoming IndyCar test in November, later this month, at the Thermal Club right down the road. Actually, it's not even right down the road; it's over in Palm Springs or around there. But you get the idea. Pretty close to us here at the 22 West Radio Studio. Pretty exciting stuff. We'll see what happens, and we will update. We'll be sure to bring you the updates as soon as they come about from IndyCar. Who knows? We might see Logan Sargent in IndyCar here pretty soon. But that is a topic for another day. I need to catch my breath here for a moment, so I'll bring you something from the Forza Horizon 5 soundtrack over here to the 22 West Radio Studio. This is Color by Grant and Janu on 22wstradio.com. YouTube stream, y'all definitely should consider checking out 22wstradio.com. Anyway, be right back and we'll talk about the trucks and the Xfinity Championships. And later on in the show, we'll break down the Cup Series Championship. Stay with us. This is Grand Prix Talk. Be right back, chat. Sorry about that, YouTube stream. We had a little technical difficulty there. That's on me mostly. Anyway, okay, so NASCAR Championships weekend, this past weekend at Phoenix Raceway. My buddy Aiden was out there. I'm hoping he had a good time. I was back here at home, and I watched most of the races at some point or another. The Cup Series race, I was able to get most of the viewing in. The Truck Series, let's start there, okay? So we got the Truck Series crowned a champion, the Xfinity Series crowned a champion, and of course the NASCAR Cup Series. They all crowned champions this past weekend at Phoenix Raceway. They were joined, I believe, by ARCA, which is a much smaller league, but also pretty much a sort of NASCAR-esque type of series. Pretty much the people who come up from the ARCA Menards, these are the guys and gals that we can expect in NASCAR at some point or another. The ARCA Menards series from 2024. Yes, they got a champion crowned as well. So now I'm curious to see who ended up with top honors in the ARCA Menard series, although that one is taken a little less seriously, even though it is a NASCAR touring division. So the ARCA Menard series standings for 2024 saw Andres Perez, a Mexican driver, come away with top honors as far as the point standings is concerned. Levar Scott from the United States finished in second place, and Chris Wright finished in third place with Tony Breidinger. I've definitely heard of her before. She ended up finishing a very respectable fourth place in the ARCA Menard series standings for this year. And fifth place went to Christian Rose. Admittedly, I've never heard of that guy, but, pretty good stuff for our top five. Marco Andretti had competed in 11 races during this season. He finished 16th in the standings, as did Tanner Gray. He competed in 6 races, finishing 20th. So actually a pretty interesting list of drivers here, not going to lie. Interesting stuff indeed. But that being said, our top champion, points-wise, was Andres Perez, even though he didn't win a single race. Or did he? Anyway, I think he did. Anyway, moving on. So Andres Perez ended up with top honors for 2024 in the ARCA Menard series, as far as the point standings is concerned. So very good stuff there. Yeah. And indeed, that makes him the first foreign-born ARCA Menard series champion. He's actually from Mexico City. So can we expect him to share the grid with Daniel Soros someday in the future? That'll be very interesting to find out. So Andrés Pérez, congratulations, muchas felicidades en tu campeonato del ARCA Menards. That's very good stuff to hear from him, from our own tribe over there in the world of racing. So ARCA Menard series, we have our champion. Let's briefly break down the Truck Series Championship, which also took place at Phoenix Raceway. ARCA Menards did also take place at Phoenix Raceway for the championship. So our first off, I just want to say, I actually watched and tuned into this race. I was so glad it didn't end in total pandemonium. Genuinely speaking, I thought that was just great. I'm so glad that they didn't decide to just start wrecking each other and taking each other out at every possible opportunity that they had. Okay, anyway, my rant there is done. Our championship 4 heading into the race were Grant Enfinger, Christian X, Corey Heim, and Ty Majeski. These are our 4 drivers who competed in the Truck Series Championship race with the possibility of winning a title of NASCAR Truck Series champion. So the race itself, like I said, it was actually surprisingly clean, all things considered. It wasn't a total wreck fest. There were a few cautions. The first one came on lap 42 by Frankie Muniz over here getting turned in stage 1. He was able to save his truck, but it still brought out a yellow. The yellow would come late enough for Corey Heim to take the stage 1 win. Not that stage wins matter at this in the final race, but there's something. Another caution did come out later on in the race on lap 59 as Jack Wood in his number 91 Chevy truck did hit the wall, and he hit it pretty hard. The rear right side of the truck pretty much destroyed. Like that thing is done at that point. Pretty bad. It's such a shame for Jack Wood, honestly. Looks like he was doing pretty all right. But yeah, that truck, and he was able to keep driving on, but the damage had been done. So there we go. No cautions. Actually, there's not that many cautions, all things considered. But we did see an interesting move here. It was Ty Majeski passing Corey Heim. These two, remember, are two of our 4 championship contenders this past weekend at Phoenix in the trucks. So for all I know, this was one of the definitive moves of the race, especially considering that these are 2 of our 4 title contenders. Ty Majeski, with that move, would end up going on to win stage number 2 during the race. Stay tuned for that a little bit later. Stage 3 got underway on lap number 98 of 150 laps that were run this day at Phoenix Raceway. And unfortunately, this one apparently ended in a wreck. At least the start of stage 3 ended with a wreck, and yes, indeed, it did. It can involve 1, 2, 3, 4. At least 4 cars were involved in this wreck. Some took some pretty hard hits. One truck actually got hit head on, but fortunately, everyone walked away unscathed. But still pretty bad. It was a pretty big wreck, no less. Like I said, at least 4 trucks were involved in that one. But no title contenders were involved in it, so we're just going to move on, and we're just glad that everyone made it out safely. So Corey Heim, in the following restart, would get penalized, if you'd believe that, and that's because he jumped the gun. Yeah, that was not good. That didn't help his championship efforts, unfortunately. Later on, we would get a red flag. Why exactly? It does not say, actually. I kind of forgot. I didn't tune in for that part. Anyway, restart, lap 40 with 43 laps to go. This restart went by pretty cleanly. There was a lot of good action going on until a few laps later when truck number 66 actually got spun. That would bring out yet another caution flag for the race. Yeah, that was quite something, but the 66 truck, he actually saved it. So it's not like he necessarily wrecked, but he did lose control of his truck. And man, one truck actually went way up in order to try and avoid it and barely squeezed by. So no damage to report on either of the two. Under that caution, 2 trucks would pit for some new tires. Those are trucks numbers 9 and 19. 19 is one of my favorite numbers. A restart with 33 laps to go wouldn't last very long as we got another truck spinning out. 2 of them, in fact, those are trucks 38 and truck number 11. That's Lane Riggs driving the 38 truck, and I don't know who drove the 11, but it certainly wasn't Denny Hamlin, so don't get that one twisted. Aside from a few wrecks like that, there really wasn't much to report, which I will be honest with you guys, that's kind of what I was hoping for out of the Truck Series Championship race. I was glad to see that they weren't wrecking each other every 10 laps or so, or every 5. Man, remember last year when this race absolutely was pandemonium? I listened in. Okay, chat, I want you guys to know, I tuned into the 2023 race on the radio, and I remember vividly, I was at a restaurant. We were celebrating my madrina's birthday. Madrina, I hope you're well if you're listening. Si me está escuchando, pues que esté bien. That being said, I listened into the to that race, and goodness me, I remember getting kind of irritated that caution after caution after caution, because one wreck after another. Goodness me, like if on the radio stream I was already having a hard time comprehending what the heck was going on in that race, imagine the people that were watching it, or worse, the people who actually paid money to see it. Oh man. So I'm so glad that this one was pretty standard. It was a pretty simple, straightforward Truck Series Championship race. I thought that was great at long last, some peace as far as that goes. Anyway, you're probably wondering who won it all. Starting, let me see. Yeah, who won it all? So finishing in 5th place was Grant Enfinger. He would also be the last of the 4 championship contenders. Some guy with the last name Sanchez finished 4th in the actual race. In 3rd place came Christian X in the number 19 truck. Corey Heim would fall runner-up and actually some 4 seconds behind race winner and 2024 NASCAR Truck Series champion Ty Majeski. So the number 98 truck driven by Ty Majeski, our boy ended up winning it all. So very well done to Ty Majeski. And like I said, I'm just so glad that actually that went surprisingly well. Like no pandemonium, no insanity, no nothing like that. It was good. It was a good race. It was simple. It was wow. Good stuff, Truck Series. Good stuff. Now, with that being said, now let's talk about the Xfinity Series Championship. This one, I actually did watch the end of it. Once I got some more context, then I thought, oh, wow, this was actually pretty solid. So, our championship four in the Xfinity Series were Austin Hill driving the number 21 Chevrolet, AJ Allmendinger in the number 16 Chevrolet, Cole Custer, who, as I said last week, this was my pick to win the championship. He drove the number 00 Ford. He was the third of the four title contenders. Justin Allgaier, a longtime Xfinity Series veteran, he was the fourth and final championship contender. He drove the number 7 Chevrolet for JR Motorsports. That's Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s race team, by the way. The race was on Saturday night for an Xfinity Series championship, a 200-lap battle at Phoenix Raceway. Now, it got off to a really clean start, and I will say I personally really like the Xfinity Series, although I do wish I would have kept up with it a little more. Maybe I'd keep up with that more than the Cup Series, to be honest. Anyway, I'll probably keep up with the Cup Series a lot more. But anyway, that being said, we ended up with a really clean first lap. Nothing to report. It was just a clean, straightforward, simple first lap, and I thought that was fantastic. I thought that was great, actually. So we started off. It was run pretty clean. There wasn't really any incidents to report, or not much action, to be honest. But we do got to talk about Justin Allgaier here and Cole Custer, my pick to win, and the other guy, I guess, the longtime veteran of the sport. Justin Allgaier, at some point or another during the race, would end up an entire lap down. Keep this in your mind, because we will come back to this later. Anyway, our first major caution came out around lap 56 or so. Actually, no, it came out a little bit later than that. But we had car number 45 actually hit the wall, and the 14 as well. Both cars, their rear ends were done. It was a done deal. In the case of the 14, it was more the right side. That car belonged to Greg Van Alst. I hope I said that correctly. The right side of the car just slapped the wall, and the rear of the car just kind of started to detach from the whole car structure. So there was that for you. Very unfortunate stuff. But the 45, that car was definitely done. That was Stephen Parsons' car, or Stephen Parsons' car. I don't know how you say his first name. But yeah, like the whole, his wreck was bad enough to where the bodywork was just hanging on for dear life. Meanwhile, you could see the fuel tank and the chassis brace and that type of stuff, which I'll be honest, I honestly do like seeing this type of machinery when it comes to the cars. But in the context of, like the wreck, maybe not so much, especially I wouldn't like to be the driver knowing that my car is basically half naked, if you ask me. How did that one happen? Well, it all came down to the 45 just losing control. He got hit by car number 5, and the 45 got the worst of it. His car slapped the outside safer barriers. Fortunately, drivers were okay, but, the cars, not so much. Moving on, let's go back to the restart on stage 2, lap 75 of 200. So pretty much 3/8 of the way through the race, and Riley Hurst in the number 98 Monster Energy Ford. I gotta say, that's one of my favorite cars to look at in the Xfinity Series. But this dude was leading ahead of Cole Custer, who was a fellow Ford driver. Justin Allgaier was already making moves. And not much else to report there. But Justin Allgaier doing pretty well so far. Then we get to the end of stage number 2, and this is when things start to settle in, I would say. We got Mr. Tree. We got Riley Hurst finishing stage 2 at the top of the leaderboard. But like I said, in a championship race, it doesn't really matter what you do as far as stage wins are concerned. What does matter, though, is if you're a championship 4 driver and you get a penalty, as Justin Allgaier actually ended up with. Around lap 103, just past the halfway mark of the race, our boy Justin Allgaier ended up with a penalty to his name. I believe that's because he tried to overtake where he shouldn't have. Yeah, he tried to get out of line before the restart, before crossing the start-finish line, which, generally speaking, you cannot do. You got to get to the start-finish line before you start trying to do any sort of overtakes. Thanks, dude. I'm still a little sleepy from last night. But anyway, yeah. So restart violation for Justin Allgaier. He would have to go and serve that penalty. And man, did that put him way behind everyone else. Where Cole Custer, one championship contender, was running in second place. And AJ Allmendinger, another championship contender, was running in 8th place. Justin Allgaier was running in 28th place. At this point, you could write this guy off. He was basically a whole lap down, and if I was most people right now, we would have written off the guy. Keep this in your mind later. We are going to come back to it. Believe me, all right? Now, moving on. Later on, we would get another caution that was around lap 157. Justin Allgaier ended up with another penalty, actually. It's not just one, it was two of them. This dude sped on pit road as well, speeding on pit road. So not only did he do a violation on the restart, this dude also ended up speeding on pit road. That has to be a nightmarish scenario for a championship contender. Like I said, anyone in their right mind would have pretty much written off the guy. Cole Custer, by the time this next caution came out, he was in third place in the race. So, like I said, keep this in your mind. We will come back to it. The next caution, during which Cole Custer was in third place, came out around lap 157 as Anthony Alfredo, the guy who tapped the 45 car that wrecked earlier. He was in the wall. That was his race done. On lap 163, the race would restart. And yeah, let me just find out what happened, because honestly, this was pretty wild. Lap 163, a pretty clean restart, I'd say, but man, did Justin Allgaier have a whole lot of work to do before him. And you could argue that cautions would make it a little bit better, right? I mean, okay, here's what, eventually he did manage to come back. He served and got waivers and all that. So he was able to get back into position to win this championship, right? On lap 198, with 3 laps to go in the race, he actually looked like he was going to do it. Maybe he was going to, assuming he could hold off Cole Custer and Austin Hill, who were running 4th and 5th respectively, while Allgaier was running in 3rd. Or, a caution maybe would throw a wrench in his monkey plans, or a monkey wrench in his plans. You can see where this is going, right? We got a caution. It was car number 42 that spun out. He lost control. He was able to get back going, but, goofy cautions for goofy reasons. Pit road was absolutely electric during this time. All 4 championship contenders came into pit road. Cole Custer took 4 tires for a 14-second pit stop. The other 3 were actually still pitting by the time Cole Custer was already heading out of pit road. Austin Hill would take a shorter pit stop for 7 seconds, getting only right side tires. Whilst Justin Allgaier and A.J. Allmendinger would also pick up 4 tires. A.J. Allmendinger had the slowest of the 4 with 16 seconds to do his pit stop, which that was not ideal, I guess you could say. Maybe that was what killed his championship efforts. Oops, I spoiled something there, but, that was just something else. Anyway, so our first of 2 overtime attempts would start with Austin Hill, championship contender, starting in first place, and Cole Custer and Justin Allgaier 4th and 5th in the race overall. So that put them 2nd and 3rd in the championship respectively. So Cole Custer, wasting no time, this dude tried to take off. And then he was blocked. And then we got a caution right before Austin Hill was going to take the white flag. And that was because car number 31 ended up in the wall. And by the time that this caution had come out, Justin Allgaier had moved up to 2nd place ahead of Riley Herbst. Yeah, that set up our second and what ended up being our final overtime attempt of the night, in which Justin Allgaier took off. This dude was a rocket ship on this restart. And he actually was aided in part because he maybe tapped his teammate in the number 2 car, who in turn tapped the 98 of Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst, however, I think that might have given him a speed boost, freaking Mario Kart style, because Riley Herbst and Justin Allgaier were left to battle it out when they caught the white flag for the final lap of the race. It was these 2 for the race win, and in Justin Allgaier's case, it was for the championship. So Riley Herbst comes out of turn 3, and going into turn 4, he takes the lead of the race, and he keeps it all the way to the finish line. Riley Herbst wins the race. Justin Allgaier, however, being the first of the championship 4 to finish, this dude wins the championship. So Justin Allgaier, for the first time in his 14-plus years of trying, I think that's what I remember hearing, he wins the Xfinity Series Championship. So very good stuff to Justin Allgaier. That's awesome. Good on him. And yeah, that was some really good stuff to hear about and actually keep up with. Now, let me catch my breath here for a moment, because up next, we got to talk about the Cup Series and Joey Logano and why fans are not happy about him winning the championship for some reason. All I'll say is, in a nutshell, hate the format, not the player. We'll talk all about that after some Mr. Belt and Westall with Shift Key, with promises here on Grand Prix Talk. Stay with us, chat. We will return here shortly after this little bop. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Be right back, chat. I need a break. All right, we are so back, chat. And in this final portion of today's episode of GPT, we will break down the NASCAR Cup Series championship and why people are mad at Joey Logano for winning it. Let's waste no time. Let's just dive right into this. All right. So going into our final race of the NASCAR season for 2024, we had our four title contenders: Tyler Reddick, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, and Joey Logano. The last of which, that guy was my pick to win. Foreshadowing. And we also were getting ready to bid farewell to Martin Truex Jr., who was partaking in his final full-time NASCAR Cup Series race in an admittedly really cool-looking tribute scheme to when he first showed up in the NASCAR Cup Series. And good old Martin Truex, good old MTJ would start the race at the front of the field ahead of Joey Logano, who started in second place. Ross Chastain and Kyle Larson started third and fourth, with Chase Elliott starting in fifth. The race got underway just past 12-ish here in California, which was around 1 o'clock over there in Phoenix. So a pretty good time, I'd say, but interesting at the same time. So the race got underway, and pretty clean start, I'd say. Everyone started fanning out, multiple cars in line. It was bizarre. But I was thinking we were going to go into like a really long green flag stretch. Poor old Ty Gibbs proved me otherwise. His car, he ended up sliding up to the top of the outside lane. He ended up slapping the outside retaining safer barriers once, which brought down a tire or something. Some type of damage happened that will lead him to absolutely pound that outside wall literally at the start of the second lap. Like it was actually a pretty hard hit, if you ask me. Like seeing that happen, those drivers are built different that was a really hard hit for sure. Fortunately, Ty Gibbs would be fine, but his season ended at the second lap of 312 that were run at Phoenix Raceway for the Cup Series Championship. Driver of the number 54 Monster Energy Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing. Yeah, I know there's a lot going on about how it's granddad's cash and all, which, let's be honest, it is. But that being said, hard hit for Ty. Good news is he got out of the car unscathed. The race would restart later on lap number 10. Again, MTJ and Joey Logano would share the front row, and Logano would take the lead pretty quickly there at the end of the second lap, or around that same time actually. Yeah, that was a pretty interesting restart there. Logano would get ahead. Not much else to report on the first stage. Logano would take the first stage win of the season of the race. I will share something that I thought was bizarre. The pace car wrecked. Yeah, you heard that correctly. The pace car, the car that's supposed to keep people safe, ended up wrecking. The reason? Well, I think it pulled in way too late into pit lane, ahead of Chase Elliott and what was that, Christopher Bell. This dude tried to make the hardest left turn you've ever seen, and yeah, he missed. He hit the sand, the sand containers. The car itself was undamaged, but then sand containers, it was a done deal. Like, they had to bring out the red flag in order to replace those because that is a legitimate safety concern. But hey, the safety car itself was fine, so something to be said about Toyota's durability, I guess. Talk about marketing at its finest. The 2025 Toyota Camry XSE Hybrid all-wheel drive will now be remembered as the pace car that wrecked at Phoenix. Anyway, restart. Lap number 72, Chase Elliott and Christopher Bell led them back around. Chase's teammate William Byron was right behind him, and this dude tried to send it, but Christopher Bell was pretty quick on that outside lane. Christopher Bell would hold on to the lead for a little while longer. A close call for our dog Joey Logano here on pit road in stage number 2 happened. This dude was coming into pit lane. He locked up the right rear of his car in trying to avoid number 7, Justin Haley, whilst in pit road. So that almost ended in a pit lane wreck. Anyway, later on in the stage, it was a battle between Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney for the stage win with 8 laps to go on stage number 2. This battle was going on pretty well, but Ryan Blaney would quickly get ahead, and he would keep that lead all the way to the end of stage number 2. The two Penske drivers in the Championship 4 ended up with the first 2 stage wins. Now there was just one final stage to go, one more stint, one more of everything to round out the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series Championship. Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney would lead them back to green, with Joey Logano and William Byron right behind them. It was the beginning of the final stage on lap number 195 of 312. The stage 3 restart, honestly, not much else to report. Cars started fanning out in multiple lanes. They got around cleanly. Tyler Reddick, meanwhile, he would try to do a 4-wide restart move, which actually worked in his favor. It was pretty solid. It was a good move. I mean, it even allowed him to overtake and actually put up a challenge to Kyle Larson, who was trying to block. Anyway, during the green flag pit stops around lap 236 of 312, a pit cycle where Joey Logano decides to pit early to make up time, followed by the 12 on the following lap. William Byron, meanwhile, he would stay out and try to stretch that fuel tank and them tires as long as he possibly could. He would have to come into pit lane with 65 laps to go in the race on lap 248 of 312. Possibly, yeah, if I remember correctly. Oh man, I'm sleepy. Anyway, yeah. The final caution of the race came out on lap number, around there. On just past lap 250, when Zane Smith in the number 71 car, he actually hit the outside retaining wall. His car just kind of stayed there. That would bring out a caution one more time. The final restart would happen with 54 laps to go in the race, and that put William Byron actually in a pretty good place. He was out front, but Joey Logano would end up taking the lead not too long afterwards, and there was a battle between Ryan Blaney and Tyler Reddick at the same time. It was a pretty good battle. There was side-by-side action going on, but that side-by-side action was what Joey Logano wanted and what no one else in the Championship 4 wanted either. So, I mean, Joey Logano wanted it. Everyone else did not. William Byron and Ryan Blaney, these two were battling it out for second place. second place, mind you. They were 2 seconds behind Joey Logano, who was already at the front of the field and running away with it. Again, 2 whole seconds ahead of the rest of the field. And although in the final few laps, we got a really good battle between teammates, Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney, where Blaney was just 0.2 of a second behind, and it looked like maybe he was going to somehow try to pull it off and catch up to Joey. Unfortunately for Blaney, it was not enough, and I ended up being correct. Joey Logano would come away not only with the race win, but with his third NASCAR Cup Series championship, officially putting him in the same ranks as folks like Darrell Waltrip, if you believe it, which is quite something. And now we got to talk about why the fans are angry about all this, all right? Now we got to dive into the nitty-gritty. So fans are not happy about Joey Logano winning this championship because it's Joey Logano, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, no, that's not actually the reason. So Joey Logano, I mean, this is even on an LE Productions 49 video. Shout out to him. I don't know if he listens to the show, but if he does, then kudos to you, man. You make great videos. But if you haven't already checked out LE Productions 49, highly recommend. He makes great videos. You'll see that Joey Logano's average finish throughout 2024 was far below not only what most championship contenders throughout the past 10 years have averaged, but also the lowest of all time, the lowest of all drivers who have ever competed in the championship for, bar none, in the past 10 years throughout this entire time. Significantly lower than the rest of the championship for contenders. That's one of those things, right? That's Joey Logano had a pretty bad season up to this point. Going into the playoffs, it didn't look like he was even not just he shouldn't have been there, but he should not have qualified for the playoffs at all. But somehow he did, and he was aided through the next round, through the round of 8, because of a disqualification from other drivers. So that didn't help much either. So this dude pretty much, he was going into the playoffs kind of like at the bottom of the field. He wins only when it's absolutely like needs to win. And he goes on to win the championship by that same way. Kind of the point, I would say. Here's my take on it all. That's kind of the format that we have. It's manufacturing things like this, you know. Fans, maybe we don't really like the playoffs so much. I certainly don't. I think it's kind of an unnecessary gimmick. But the leadership at NASCAR, this is what they want. This is what they wanted. They want those bottom of the field drivers to suddenly, in some way or form, storm their way to the front and come away with ultimate victory. This is what they want. This is what they voted for. And this is what they got, right? Joey Logano is ultimately just kind of the product. Like, this championship win for Joey Logano is just kind of a product of what NASCAR wanted. They get exactly what they're looking for, right? They want their drivers to have to battle it out only in the final 10 races, when most of us, myself included, are starting to watch football. You know, that's kind of one of the big reasons why. What is going on outside? Anyway, that's kind of one of the reasons why I feel like the playoffs suddenly are not making so much sense to me anymore. It's like suddenly I'm watching football now. I'm rooting for the Los Angeles Rams, and whenever there's a Rams game going on, I'm usually watching that over the NASCAR race. In part because, I mean, now I understand, like, the NASCAR season really goes on for a good long minute, and that's, I think, in part why IndyCar is cutting their season short to the end of August for 2025, because Fox has a huge NFL deal, and, you know, they take their NFL broadcasting seriously. Moving on, that's a topic for another time. But my point is, the NASCAR playoffs started off just to keep viewer interest coming back at a time when the NFL is kicking off their season, because a lot of us are watching football now. That being said, they also wanted to make it as chaotic as possible in order to keep viewers coming back for more. And the result is moments like this, when Joey Logano, a driver that otherwise would not have even been in championship contention in most other formats, comes away with ultimate victory. And this is all kind of documented by Slapshoes when he explains why he thinks the NASCAR playoffs are stupid and bad. And now I have to agree. Granted, I do feel good I feel happy for Joey Logano. You know, he's an extremely talented driver, and he has a lot more championships than I do. I'll tell you that much. But that being said, this is kind of the product of what NASCAR wants. This is what they wanted. This is what they got. This is exactly what they were hoping for, and they got it. So happier for them. I think, like I said, I think Joey Logano's a very talented driver. So I guess in my take, don't hate the player, hate the format. Joey Logano is just reaping and just basically exploiting this NASCAR playoff system with a sickening crack. Cold slap shoots on that one. But yeah, that's my take on it. And I'm willing and I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say, whether that's on social media or on my YouTube stream. But yeah, Joey Logano is your 2024 NASCAR Cup Series champion, whether we love it or hate it. And that is the end of the 2024 NASCAR season. So that will also conclude today's episode of Grand Prix Talk. Next week on the show, we will preview the Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix and find out how Max Verstappen can come away with a fourth championship victory. It would be his fourth consecutive, which only the last time that happened was Sebastian Vettel between 2010 and 2013. That's for next week, though. I'm going to clock out. It's time for me to head out the door. Stay tuned to 22westradio.com and especially come back later on in the afternoon. Coming up next here on 22 West Radio, we have Hear Me Out by Samantha Rosario and Jerry Reynoso. That's coming up next here on 22 West Radio. And later on this evening at 5 o'clock, Nat the Rock Show. At 6 o'clock, Self Center Radio. And at 7 o'clock, you will hear my voice again. Yes, that's correct. But why, I hear you ask? You talk about racing already. Well, together with someone that at this moment I haven't figured out, I will be calling a women's volleyball game here at Cal State Long Beach. So tune in tonight at 7 o'clock. Myself and my teammate, we will be calling out a game later this afternoon. So tune in or come on over to the Walter Pyramid. Be there and support our women's volleyball team at 7 o'clock as they take on UC San Diego. So I hope to hear you guys there or hear from you guys or even see you all there. It would be very nice. But for now, that will conclude Grand Prix Talk. So thank you all so much for tuning in. My name is Sergio Morales, and you can follow me on Instagram at Smorstagram, SMORstagram. You can also follow us at 22SLB or 22S Radio, also on Instagram. So see you all back here tonight at 7 o'clock for some women's volleyball versus UC San Diego. Until then, see you all next week for more Grand Prix Talk.